I heard the two different perspectives. One is that America is grounded by biblical understanding and God. And the other perspective is that, no, America is not founded by Christian value.
Well, first of all, any person who says that the scripture did not have an influence on the founding of America, it is either intellectually dishonest or it's intellectual ignorance. And what I found is too many Americans that they are ignorant, because it has been repeated over and over and over that Christianity had no basis with the founding of America, that's not true, separation of church and state. And see, again, that's an example of that statement, separation of church and state, is a statement that was made by Thomas Jefferson, okay? Well, Thomas Jefferson is still the same person who wrote the Declaration of Independence. And he's the one that said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. And so the person that wrote Separation of Church and State is the person that stated in the Declaration, and then others signed the document. The other founders signed the document affirming that what was in, they put their name on that document, that and I'm gonna break that statement down just for our viewers here, that when we look at that statement, that's the thesis statement of the Declaration of Independence. And I want to say something, I may have said it on our last video, and I can't remember, but there's two documents that are at the heart of America. The first one is the beginning of American culture. Our very first founding document is the Declaration of Independence. And that is the founding of the Christian culture, okay? That is the founding of the Christian nation as a people. And after the Revolutionary War was fought, when the war was won, then the second document, a number of years later, was written, and that's the Constitution, and that establishes the government of this people. But the founding of America and American culture is one event in history, and the second event is how do we form our government? The government and the people are not always the same. And you and I've talked about this before, that when I look at China, I recognize that, yes, the Chinese people are there. Is everybody in China a member of the Chinese Communist Party? And the answer is no. And so when they say people in China this, people in China that, I go, time out. Are we talking the people of China, or are we saying the Chinese Communist Party? Same thing if somebody's in China and they look at America and they see President Trump, or they see, Joe Biden, and they say, look at those Americans, those Americans are, drowning in scandal. Look at Joe Biden, or, whatever. Well, you can look at the party, but the parties do not reflect the individual people. And that's why when the work that you and I started going on 20 years ago, it was a people to people relationship as opposed to a government to government relationship. There is a place for government to government, no doubt about that. But when it's the people to people, that's a completely different dynamic. And so when somebody looks at America, there is the founding of the nation, which means nationality or the people. And the founding of the people is not the same thing as the founding of the government. So when we look at the founding documents of the nation, that the core, the most important statement in that is that statement that I just quoted. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Well, first of all, the we is not the government didn't say that, it was the people said that. The signers of the Declaration said that. So that's the we, that is the collective we. And then it says, we hold, and the word hold, it's a faith statement that says we are persuaded that this is true. Okay, we're holding tight to these principles, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that they are true, whether I believe them, whether you believe them, whether I accept them, whether you accept them, whether I reject them, whether you reject them. Doesn't matter how you and I personally feel and think. That the founder said, whether you agree with us or not, this is true. This is true. This is self-evident. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and it's not just Americans, it's not just white people, it is all human beings, Europeans, Africans, South Americans, Asians, North Americans, Pacific Islanders, that every human being has been given by their creator the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. And so when we look at that is a statement that is universal. It doesn't say we believe that the people in the 13 colonies are created equal. They made a statement that covered all of humanity. They covered all of humanity. And so when we look at that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator. The most important word in the Declaration of Independence is the word creator, because if there's not a creator, then where is the source of life, the right to life? Where is the source of the right to liberty or the right to pursue happiness? Is that grounded in the government, or is that grounded in God? And so the founders made it very clear that the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness, it originates in God, where nobody can molest or take that right away.
So basically, Declaration of Independence should be agreed by both Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Do you think so?
Well, yes, because in order to be an American in the original sense, that's true. However, in the Democrat Party, that they have voted officially to remove all reference to God at any Democrat event, whether it's there's no prayer, there's no Pledge of Allegiance. They voted on it at the convention where Hillary Clinton was nominated. Oh. And so you have a party that intentionally rejects the view that God has anything to do with the affairs of men. And then now the Republican Party is not perfect, but the majority of the people in the Republican Party, leaders and rank and file registered voters, they still believe that it is God that gave us the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that God exists, and that God is going to judge all nations, not just individual people, but all nations as well. And so you have a party that recognizes that God has a stake in the affairs of men, and then you have another party that says God has nothing to do with it. God is dead. We're in charge. And there's a whole history from the middle of the 19th century all the way through the 20th century that brings us to that point. And maybe someday we should do a conversation lesson on how did that unfold? How did the people in America, some people in America, move from the idea that God gives the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to the point that, well, God doesn't exist, we're in charge. That's a story right there in itself.
Okay, now I understand a little bit. So I watched you many years. You have compassion with all Americans, both, regardless, Republican or a Democrat. And I heard from different other people also, their care and their loving kind, and it's not holding the party line. Okay, it's American, it's people. So some of the political commentary was saying nowadays either party, let's say maybe right now the danger is to be taken by radicals. Mm-hmm. So is that because, whatever the political affiliation, the danger is moved to the radicals, and then they lost, the religious foundation, or, taking religious freedom as one of the foundations. How do you see that?
Okay. So we have watched the last 150 years that ideas, they're kind of like smoke. They can go anywhere. And there is no nation, there is no political party, there is no language group, there's no institution where ideas cannot flow. The ideas are very, very fluid. And for instance, we see it there in China, where Mao used to talk, and also Deng Xiaoping would make statements like communism with Chinese characteristics. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, looking for the Chinese characteristics is pretty hard, because most of what you see was hardcore communism, very similar to the Soviets. And so what we're seeing in the Democrat Party today is communism with American characteristics. and I shared this with you before, and I've read biographies on Mao and Deng Xiaoping and Stalin and Marx and I have to take them at their word. And when these world-shaping leaders, and including Hitler, because he had the same worldview, every single one of them, whether they identified as communist or socialist, and whether it was international communism or national socialism, the one thing that they had in common was the worldview that rejected the existence of God, and that the material universe is all that existed, okay, or all that exists, currently. And so when I look at the writings of Marx and the writings of Mao, and it says, well, it doesn't matter whether we use the word socialism or the word communism. What matters is that the outcome that we want, that getting to that end justifies whatever means and whatever vocabulary that we can use. So in some cases, and in some eras and some decades, those that hold the naturalist worldview, rejecting God and wanting to create political and economic and social structures, business structures, corporate structures based on that idea, if using the term communism advance the cause, it's good. But if people didn't feel comfortable with that, use the word socialism, that's good. The point is that the end justifies the means, regardless of what word you use. And this is an example of how the corruption of language has been leading to the downfall of America. And that's why I said in our last video is that the battle right now is not between Donald Trump or Joe Biden. The battle is between a free and open society or a natural that acknowledges that God exists and that people are free and have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And the express existence of the government is to secure for the individual, which came to them from the hand of God. So it's either that view, which Donald Trump right now, with all of his flaws, is that he advances that view. He says the government's not the final authority in the life of the citizen. Joe Biden, on the other hand, he is pushing forward the same ideas. He's using the term socialism as opposed to communism. Okay.
You told me once, and I was a little bit surprised that you said, either one of your friends says, we lost our younger generation, the many parents. And one of the issue I noticed is the younger generation was saying Republicans, only care about the rich people, and Democrats really cares about, the poor people. And that's one of the central debate